Listen to me very carefully, because what I am about to tell you is something that I have never told anyone, not my wife, not my supervisor, not even the guys I work with every single night. And the reason I have never told anyone is because I know exactly what they would say. They would say I was tired. They would say it was the shift messing with my head. They would say that working nights in a warehouse the size of 4 football fields does something to a man after a while. And maybe, they would be right, except for one thing. Except for the fact that what I saw that night left footprints, small ones, child-sized ones, pressed into the dust on aisle 37. And I have photographs, and I am still not sleeping. And I need you to stay with me until the very end of this story, because the last thing I am going to tell you is going to change the way you think about every warehouse, every logistics center, every massive dark building you have ever driven past at 3 in the morning and wondered what goes on inside. My name is not important. What is important is that I am a night shift lead at a GXO Logistics center. GXO is one of the largest contract logistics companies in the world. You have probably never heard the name, but you have definitely touched something that moved through one of their buildings. The sneakers on your feet, the television on your wall, the medicine in your cabinet. At some point, something in your life sat in a rack in a building exactly like the one I work in. My facility is enormous. I am talking about a building so large that on a clear night, you can see the glow of its dock lights from 3 miles away on the highway. We have got 112 loading bays. We run 3 shifts. And on the night shift, the shift that starts at 10 p.m. and ends at 6 in the morning, I am the one in charge. I manage 50 men. 50. On a good night, they are scattered across the floor in their zones, picking orders, replenishing locations, wrapping pallets, driving reach trucks and pallet jacks through the aisles like a slow-motion city that never stops moving. On a bad night, half of them call out sick. The system crashes, the conveyor belts jam, and I spend 8 hours running from one crisis to the next with a radio on my hip and a headset on my ear and a clipboard in my hand that I barely have time to look at. I have been doing this job for 6 years. I know this building the way I know my own house. I know which dock doors stick in the cold weather. I know which section of the floor has a slight dip where the concrete settled wrong. I know which overhead lights flicker on aisle 60 before they die completely. I know this place, or at least I thought I did. Let me tell you about the rules first, because every warehouse has rules and most of them make sense, and some of them you only understand after something goes wrong. Rule number 1 at my facility is that nobody, absolutely nobody, walks the floor without a high visibility vest. It sounds simple. It is actually the most important rule we have, because the reach trucks move at 14 miles an hour in the aisles, and a man in a dark jacket against a dark rack is invisible until it is too late, and I have seen what happens when a reach truck clips a man, and I will not describe it here. Rule number 2 is that no aisle above level 3 on the racks is accessed without a trained operator and a working order in the system. The racks go up 40 feet in some sections. Rule number 3, and this is the one that matters for what I am about to tell you. Rule number 3 is that no unauthorized personnel are permitted on the floor at any time under any circumstances. No visitors. No contractors without a badge. No family members. Nobody who is not clocked in and accounted for on my headcount sheet. Nobody. Now, let me tell you about the night it started. It is a Tuesday, or technically a Wednesday, because it is already past midnight. It is the 3rd week of November, and we are in peak season, which means the volume is up, the pressure is up, the error rate is up, and I have been on my feet since 9:45 p.m. I have done my floor walk. I have checked in with all my zone leads. I have sorted out a dispute between 2 pickers on aisle 22 about who was supposed to cover the footwear zone. I have called maintenance about a conveyor jam on the south loop. I am tired, but this is a normal kind of tired, the kind I carry every single night. It is 3:17 in the morning. I know the exact time because I look at my watch when it happens. I am standing at the end of aisle 40, looking down the long, dark corridor of racking toward the far wall, and my radio crackles, and one of my guys, Marcus, he works the replenishment on the east side. Marcus calls me and says, "Hey, lead, I just saw something weird on aisle 37. I press the button and ask him what he means by weird. He pauses. That pause is what gets me. Marcus is a big man. He has been doing night shift warehouse work for 9 years. He does not pause before he speaks. He just talks. But he pauses, and then he says, "I think I just saw a kid, like a little kid, running between the racks." I tell him to meet me at aisle 37. I walk there myself. It takes me about 45 seconds because the aisles are long and I am moving fast because my mind is already doing the math, already thinking about how a child could have gotten into a secured facility, thinking about the liability, thinking about the dock doors, thinking about whether someone propped open an emergency exit for a smoke break, which happens, which I have written people up for before. I get to aisle 37. Marcus is already there, standing at the entrance to the aisle, and he is looking down it, and the look on his face is the second thing that gets me. Marcus does not look scared. I have never seen Marcus look scared, but he looks uncertain, and that is almost worse, because Marcus is never uncertain either. I ask him where. He points down the aisle. He says it went down there and turned. I say turned where, because there is no turn in the middle of an aisle. The racks go straight from one end to the other. He says he does not know. He says it just went around the side of a rack and disappeared. I pull out my radio and do a head count check with all my zone leads. All 50 men accounted for. Every single one. I walk the length of aisle 37 with my flashlight on. The overhead lights in this section have that flicker I told you about. The ones that are dying. So there is a strobing quality to the light as I walk. That kind of yellow and shadow rhythm that makes everything look slightly wrong. I check every gap between the racking uprights. I check the floor level pick locations on both sides. I get to the far end of the aisle and there is nothing. No child, no person, nothing out of place, except for the footprints. Right at the very end of the aisle, where the concrete meets the rubber floor mat that runs along the back wall, there is a fine layer of dust that accumulates near the lower rack locations because the sweeper machine does not reach that far under the bottom shelf. And in that dust, there are 2 small footprints, facing away from me, child-sized. I stare at them for a long time. I take a photo on my phone. I tell Marcus to say nothing to the other guys yet, and I walk the perimeter of the building myself, checking every emergency exit, every dock door, every side entrance. Everything is secured. Everything is locked. I file an incident report. The security footage from that aisle is reviewed. The camera on aisle 37 has a blind spot, a gap between 2 camera angles that covers approximately 8 feet of floor space right in the middle of the aisle, and whatever Marcus saw moved right through that blind spot. The footage shows nothing. The report is filed as inconclusive. I tell myself it was dust, old footprints, someone's kid who came in during the day shift and left marks in the dust that just happened to look fresh. I tell myself a lot of things that week. But here is the thing about working nights in a large building. Here is the thing nobody tells you before you take the job. A building that size, at 3 in the morning, with 50 men spread across 250,000 square feet, is not as populated as it sounds. You can stand in the middle of an aisle 60 feet long, and the nearest human being might be 200 feet away from you, and you would not be able to hear them, and they would not be able to hear you. There are pockets of this building that are completely silent at 3 a.m., completely still, not a forklift, not a conveyor belt, not a radio. Just racks and boxes and the hum of the overhead lighting. And when you are in one of those pockets and you hear something that should not be there, the sound travels differently in a space that large. It bends around the racking. It echoes off the concrete floor, and you can never quite pin down where it is coming from. The following Thursday, 12 days after Marcus sees what he sees, I am in the center of the building near the pallet staging area, which is a wide open section with no racking, just floor, where the built pallets wait to go back to the dock. It is 2:49 a.m. I know the time. I always know the time now. And I hear something. It is a sound I cannot immediately place. It is rhythmic and soft, and it is coming from somewhere to my left, in the direction of the bulk storage zone, which is a section of the warehouse where we store oversized items, large televisions, exercise equipment, furniture and flat boxes, things that do not fit in the standard racking. The bulk zone is darker than the rest of the floor because the lighting was installed on the same circuit as the east dock doors, and 3 of the overhead banks burned out 6 months ago, and facilities has not gotten to replacing them yet. So the bulk zone at 3 in the morning is dim. Not pitch black, but close to it. I walk toward the sound. As I get closer, I realize what it is. It is the sound of something sliding. Something being dragged or slid across the concrete floor slowly, rhythmically, back and forth, like a child dragging a stick, or a child playing with something on the floor. I stop walking and I stand very still, and I listen, and the sound continues, and then it stops. The silence that follows a sound like that, in a space that large, at that hour, is a very specific kind of silence. It is not peaceful. It is not the silence of nothing happening. It is the silence of something waiting. I key my radio. I ask if anyone has eyes on the bulk zone. 2 of my guys, Derek and a temp worker named Philip, are working in that area. Derek responds immediately and says he is on the south side of bulk. Philip does not respond. I ask again. Still nothing. I start walking faster toward bulk. I am maybe 30 feet into the zone when I see Philip. He is standing in the middle of an aisle between 2 stacks of flat-pack furniture, and he is standing completely still, facing away from me, and his radio is in his hand, not clipped to his belt, and he is not moving. I call his name. He does not turn around. I walk up to him and put a hand on his shoulder, and he spins around so fast he nearly drops his radio. And the look on his face is something I will carry with me for the rest of my life. He is pale. Temp workers are not always experienced people. Some of them are very young, but Philip is in his 30s. He is not a nervous person. He has been reliable for the 3 weeks he has worked with us. And he is pale in the way that a person goes pale when the blood drains from the surface of their skin because something has happened to their nervous system, when the fight or flight response has flooded their body and all the blood has gone to the organs and muscles and left nothing for the face. I ask him what is wrong. He looks at me, and then he looks over my shoulder, and then back at me. And he says, "There is a little girl in here. She was just standing right there. She was just standing right there looking at me, and then she was gone." I do not sleep when I get home that morning. Now I am going to tell you something that I have not told you yet, and I need you to understand the weight of it. This facility was not always a logistics center. The land it was built on, the specific parcel it sits on, was before the warehouse was constructed, a residential neighborhood. A residential neighborhood that was demolished in the early 1990s to make way for the industrial zone. And I know this because when I start digging, when I start looking, when I start going through old county records on my days off because I cannot sleep anyway, I find something. There was a family in the house that sat where our bulk storage zone now stands. And there was a child, a little girl, 7 years old. And she did not survive the house fire that destroyed that home in 1988, for years before the neighborhood was cleared. The record is right there in the county archive, right there in black and white. I am not a man who believes in ghosts. I want to make that very clear. I am a practical man. I am a logistics man. I deal in numbers and systems and processes. I believe in things I can see and touch and measure. Or I did. Over the next 3 weeks, things escalate. My guys start reporting sounds. Light tapping from the upper levels of the racking in sections where there is no work being done and no reason for anyone to be up there. One of my reach truck operators, a man named Greg who has been doing this for 11 years, tells me he was driving down aisle 22 at 4 a.m. and something crossed in front of his truck. He braked hard enough to leave a skid mark on the epoxy floor. He said it was small. He said it moved fast. He said it ran across the aisle and went straight into the base of the racking on the left side and did not come out the other side. I checked the racking. There is no gap, no opening. Solid upright steel. The atmosphere on the floor starts to change in a way that is hard to quantify, but very easy to feel. My guys are distracted. People who have worked nights for years and are completely at home in this building start asking to change zones. Start asking to not work in certain aisles. Start congregating in pairs and threes instead of working solo the way they always have. One of my best pickers, a guy named Antonio who never talks about anything except soccer and his mother's cooking, corners me near the break room at 4:30 one morning, and he tells me that he has started praying before he enters the building. He is not joking. He is completely serious. He says something is in there. He says everyone feels it. And then comes the night, everything changes. It is a Friday, or technically a Saturday, because it is 12 minutes past 3 in the morning. Peak season. Floor is fully staffed. All 50 men are working. The conveyor system is running. The reach trucks are moving. The building is as alive as it gets at that hour. And I am standing in the center of the building doing a productivity check on my handheld terminal when every single overhead light in aisle 37 goes out. Not flickers, not dims. Goes out. All of them. Simultaneously. The entire aisle goes completely dark. My radio immediately fills with voices asking what is happening. I tell everyone to stand by. I tell the reach truck operators to stop in place. I start walking toward aisle 37. I have my flashlight. I am moving with purpose. I am telling myself this is an electrical fault. This is a tripped breaker. This is something that has a rational explanation, and I am going to find it and fix it. I get to the entrance of aisle 37, and I shine my flashlight down the length of it. 110 feet of dark aisle. 40 feet of racking on both sides going straight up. And at the far end, at the very far end of the aisle, right where the footprints were, right at the back wall, there is something standing there. It is small. It is the height of a child. It is standing perfectly still. And it is facing me. My flashlight is a good one, a professional grade beam, and it reaches the full length of the aisle. But the figure at the end, whatever is standing there, the light does not seem to land on it right. It catches the edges, but not the center. Like looking at something through frosted glass. Like the light bends slightly around it instead of hitting it flat. I stand there. I do not move. I am not a man who scares easily. I have worked nights for 11 years total counting my time before GXO. I have been in situations, confrontations with trespassers, near-miss incidents with heavy equipment, moments of genuine physical danger, and I have always kept my head. But I am standing at the entrance to aisle 37 at 3:12 a.m. looking at something at the far end that I cannot explain, and every single instinct in my body is telling me not to walk into that aisle. I stand there for what feels like 2 minutes, but is probably 30 seconds. And then the figure moves. It does not walk. It does not run. It shifts. The way a candle flame shifts in a draft. Just a slight movement, a slight change in where it is standing, and then it is closer. Noticeably closer. And I did not see it move. I was watching, and I did not see it move. I key my radio. I tell Marcus and Derek to come to aisle 37 right now. I keep my flashlight on the far end of the aisle. I do not take my eyes off that end of the aisle. Marcus arrives in 45 seconds. Derek arrives in a minute. They both come up beside me, and I tell them to look. And they both look. And they both see it. Marcus says, "What is that?" Derek does not say anything. He is very still. The three of us stand there, and we look at it, and it looks at us. Or at least it is facing us. Facing us from the far end of a dark aisle at 3 in the morning in a warehouse built on the ground where a little girl burned to death. And then the lights in aisle 37 come back on. All of them. Simultaneously. The same way they went out. And the far end of the aisle is empty. We walk the full length. We check every location. We check the back wall. We check the floor near the back wall. The footprints in the dust are still there. The ones from the first night. The photograph is still on my phone. But now, next to them, there is something new in the dust. A handprint. Small. Flat against the floor, like something sat down or crouched. Like something was waiting there for a very long time. I call an all hands on the radio, and I tell every man on the floor to come to the main aisle. All 50 of them. Right now, they come, and I tell them to go home. I tell them we are shutting down early. I tell them something I should not tell them as their lead, but something I cannot stop from saying, because I am looking at 50 men who all know something is wrong and have known for weeks. I tell them I believe something is in this building that should not be in this building. I tell them I cannot make anyone stay. I tell them the decision is theirs. 22 men leave. 28 stay. I stay. I finish the shift. Nothing else happens that night. I submit my formal resignation 2 weeks later. Not because of what I saw. Not entirely. But because of something that happens on the last night I work in that building. Something I need to tell you now, because it is the reason I cannot stop thinking about this. On my last shift, at 4:40 a.m., I am walking my final floor check before the day's shift arrives. I am walking aisle 37 because I always walk aisle 37 now. I cannot explain why. I walk it and I shine my light, and everything is normal. And I am about to leave the aisle when I hear a sound. It is quiet, very quiet, and it is coming from above me, from somewhere up in the racking, maybe 20 or 25 feet up. It is the sound of a child humming. A little melody. Simple. Like something you would hum to yourself when you were 7 years old, and you were playing, and you did not know anyone could hear you. It stops as soon as I look up. I look up into the dark top levels of the racking. My flashlight cuts up through the shadow between the shelves. And there, on level 6, 30 feet above the floor, sitting on the edge of a shelf between two large cardboard boxes, is a pair of small feet. Dangling. The way a child's feet dangle when they are sitting on something high up. Swinging slightly. Bare feet. I watch them swing for 3 seconds. And then they are gone. I walked out of that building at 5:50 a.m. I never went back. I do not drive past that area of the highway anymore. And sometimes, late at night when I cannot sleep, which is most nights now, I think about the county records. About the house. About the fire in 1988. About a 7-year-old girl. And I wonder if she knows she is still there, trapped in the walls and the racking and the dark aisles of a building that was built over everything she ever knew. I wonder if she is lonely. I wonder if she is waiting for something. And I wonder if the 50 men who work that floor right now, tonight, while you are watching this, I wonder if any of them have started to notice the footprints in the dust on aisle 37. If you're watching this right now and you have ever worked a night shift in a large building and something has happened that you could not explain, I want you to tell me in the comments. Because I do not think I am the only one. And if this story hit you the way I think it hit you, stay right here, because the next story I have for you tonight is going to be worse. Much worse. I need you to stay with me for story number 2. Story number 2. Before I tell you what I saw inside that cold storage unit, I need to tell you something about the human mind at 4 in the morning, because without that context you are not going to believe me, and I need you to believe me. I need you to believe me because I have been driving that same route to work for 3 years since that night, and every single time my headlights sweep across the entrance to that facility, my hands tighten on the steering wheel, and my stomach does something that I can only describe as dropping. And that does not happen to a person because of something they imagined. That happens because of something real. Something that looked at me with no eyes from between two hanging carcasses in a -20-degree room at 4 a.m. in the Central Valley of California. And by the time I finish telling you this story, you're going to understand exactly why I still sleep with the light on. I am a night shift material handler in California. I work in the cold chain. If you do not know what the cold chain is, it is the system of refrigerated warehouses and refrigerated trucks and refrigerated facilities that keeps your food cold from the moment it is processed to the moment it reaches the store. It is an invisible system. Most people never think about it. Most people never think about the fact that at 4 a.m. in a building in the Central Valley, there are men like me driving electric forklifts through rooms that are colder than most winter mornings in Alaska, moving product that used to be alive. My facility handles meat, full hanging carcasses, boxed product, portion cuts, the whole range. The cold storage unit I work in is a blast freeze room, meaning it is designed to bring the temperature of product down very rapidly before it moves into longer-term storage. The blast freeze room operates at minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit. I want you to sit with that number for a moment. Minus 20, the kind of cold that makes your nose hairs freeze the second you breathe in. The kind of cold where exposed skin starts to feel wrong after 30 seconds. The kind of cold that makes the air itself feel like it has a weight to it, a thickness, like it is pushing back against you. We have rules in cold storage. Real rules. Life safety rules. Rule 1. Nobody enters the blast freeze room alone. You always have a buddy because hypothermia and cold incapacitation can happen faster than you expect. And if you go down alone in there at 4 a.m., nobody finds you until it is too late. Rule 2. Every person entering blast freeze checks in on the log at the door and checks out. The log is physical, paper, not digital, because screens stop working in those temperatures. Rule 3. Maximum continuous time in blast freeze is 45 minutes. After 45 minutes, you exit to the dock staging area to warm up for a minimum of 15 minutes before re-entry. Rule 4 is the one I did not fully understand the importance of until the night I am about to describe to you. Rule 4 is that you do not stop moving in blast freeze. Keep moving. Always keep moving. Not because of the cold, although that is part of it, but because the room is set up in a specific way, rails running the full length from which the hanging carcasses are suspended. And if you stop moving your forklift in the wrong spot, the hanging product swings on the rails in the draft from the blast fans, and you can get a carcass swinging into you that weighs 300 pounds before you know it is coming. Keep moving. Always. I have been doing this job for 4 years. 3 of those 4 years on nights. My partner in the cold room for most of that time is a man named Eddie. Eddie is 51 years old. He grew up in Fresno. He has worked cold chain his whole adult life. Eddie is the person who taught me the rules. Eddie is the person who told me on my first night. He said, "Listen to me. In there it is always darker than you think it is going to be. It is always colder than you think it is going to be. And it is always quieter than you think it is going to be. And those 3 things together will do things to your head if you let them. Do not let them. Stay on your machine. Stay on task. Stay in motion." I have kept those 3 instructions for 4 years. Until the night Eddie calls out sick. It is a Tuesday in February. The shift starts at 10 p.m. I am told at 11 that Eddie is called in and that management is trying to get a replacement, but there are no replacement cold room certified operators available tonight. I am told I will be working solo in blast freeze. I tell them about Rule 1. The supervisor, a young guy named Travis who has been in the building for 8 months and has never spent more than 5 minutes in blast freeze, tells me that operations needs the room cleared and replenished and that he will check on me every 30 minutes via radio. I want to tell you right now that I should have refused. I know the rule. I have known the rule for 4 years. But peak season pressure is real and I am not that kind of person. The kind who refuses work, and Eddie's absence means twice the workload needs to get done in the same window, or we fall behind and the whole shift suffers. And so I put on my thermal layers, I put on my insulated gloves and my thermal balaclava and my eye protection, and I check in on the paper log at 4 minutes after midnight. And I drive my forklift through the double insulated doors into blast freeze. Let me tell you what it looks like in there, because I need you to see it the way I see it every night. So that when I tell you what I see at 4 a.m., you understand exactly the conditions under which I am seeing it. The room is long, about 200 feet long and 60 feet wide. The ceiling is maybe 25 feet high. Along the full length of the ceiling, there are 2 rows of ceiling-mounted blast fans, industrial fans that circulate the chilled air constantly, and they create a noise in that room that is constant and low and pervasive, a kind of deep mechanical rushing sound that fills every corner. The lighting in Blast Freeze is LED panels, very bright, very white, and they illuminate everything with a flatness that removes shadows almost completely. Almost. Because the carcasses create their own shadows. The hanging carcasses are suspended from the overhead rail system in rows. They hang from hooks at the level of about 18 feet, which means the bottom of each carcass, which on a full beef side is maybe 4 or 5 feet from ground level, hangs at about 13 feet. The carcasses are large. A full beef side weighs 250 to 350 pounds. They hang in rows of about 20, spaced perhaps 2 feet apart, and there are maybe 12 or 15 rows running the full length of the room. And they sway. Slightly. Always slightly. Because of the blast fans above. Just a gentle, constant movement. Pendulum-like. All of them together. If you have never stood in a room full of hanging meat carcasses, you cannot fully understand the visual of it, and I am not sure I can do it justice with words, but I will try. They are pale. The cold has a bleaching effect. The surface of the meat freezes to a white-gray color, and in the flat white LED light of the blast freeze room, they look almost luminous. They hang in these rows, these pale swaying shapes, and from certain angles, certain positions in the room, they look like people. They look like hanging bodies. It is the first thing everyone notices the first time they see it. It is the last thing you stop noticing. I have been in this room thousands of times. I stopped noticing it after the first few months. They are meat. They are product. They are inventory. I drive between the rows. I pick locations. I stage product. I move and keep moving, and I do not think about what they look like. Until the night, I am alone in there. The first 2 hours go fine. Travis checks in on the radio at 12:30 and 1 o'clock and 1:30, and I confirm I am okay each time. The room is the room. Cold and loud with fans and white. I am working efficiently. I am keeping the 3 rules in my head. Stay on task. Stay warm. Stay moving. It is at approximately 2:40 a.m. that I notice something has changed in the room. I cannot immediately name what has changed. It is a feeling first, before it is a thought. A feeling of wrongness, a feeling of something that was one way now being a different way. And because the room is loud with the fans and bright and cold, and I have been in it continuously for over 2 hours at this point, I dismiss the feeling immediately and keep working. But the feeling does not go away. I am driving down one of the carcass rows, moving slowly because I am checking hanging position and spacing, and I am about halfway down the row when I realize what has changed. The carcasses are not moving. They are not swaying. In a room with 2 full rows of industrial blast fans running constantly, in a room where the air is always in motion, the carcasses are hanging completely, perfectly still. I stop my forklift. The fans are still running. I can hear them. I can feel the air moving against my face. But the carcasses on both sides of me are hanging absolutely motionless, and I am looking at them, 30 on each side of me down the length of this row, and every single one of them is still, and it is wrong. It is wrong in a way that my body understands before my mind does, in the way that any deviation from the expected pattern in a large industrial space at 3 a.m. triggers something animal in you, something old. I sit on my forklift in the middle of the row, and I look to the far end of the row. The row is maybe 60 feet long from where I am sitting to the far wall. The carcasses hang on both sides. 60 feet of pale hanging shapes completely still. And at the far end of the row, at the very far end, there is one of them that is not hanging the same way as the others. It is facing the wrong way. Every carcass in that room is hung the same way. Hooks through the rear legs, split down the center, the open cavity facing in a consistent direction based on the rail orientation. I know this room. I know exactly how the product hangs. And at the far end of the row, the last carcass before the far wall is facing the wrong way. It is facing me. The open cavity is facing me. I tell myself it was hung wrong. I tell myself someone on the processing side made an error and it was loaded onto the rail incorrectly. This happens. It is uncommon, but it happens. I start my forklift forward to go check it, to document it for the quality log, because a misoriented carcass has to be logged and addressed. I drive forward. Slowly. The carcasses on both sides of me are still not moving. Still perfectly still in a room full of moving air. I drive toward the far end. I am watching the misoriented carcass as I approach it. And when I am about 20 feet away from it, I stop the forklift again. Because it has moved. While I was watching it, while my eyes were on it, it has moved. Not swung on the rail. Not shifted from a draft. It is in a slightly different position than it was 30 seconds ago. The angle of the body has changed. The way it is facing has changed slightly. And there is something on its surface that was not there before. Something dark. In the split center of the carcass, in the open cavity, which is facing me, which should be empty because the viscera were removed at processing, there is something dark, something that is the wrong color entirely for this room, something that is not the pale gray-white of frozen meat, something that looks like eyes. I want to tell you that I stayed calm. I want to tell you that I had a rational explanation immediately. I want to tell you that I keyed my radio and called Travis and waited for someone to come in and explain it to me. But that is not what happened. What happened is that I sat on my forklift in a room at minus 20 degrees, and I looked at what was looking at me from inside a hanging beef carcass at the end of a row in a building in the Central Valley of California at 4 a.m., and every cell in my body told me to leave. Not to back up slowly. Not to radio first. To leave. Right now. Immediately. To turn the forklift around and drive out of that room and not look back. And I did. I turned the forklift around and I drove out of the blast freeze room at the maximum speed that machine could do, which is not fast. It is perhaps 8 miles an hour, which feels agonizingly slow when every instinct is screaming at you. And I drove out through the double insulated doors and into the dock staging area, and I hit the emergency radio channel, and I told Travis I was exiting blast freeze and I needed him there now. Travis came. It took him 4 minutes. He found me sitting on the dock staging floor with my back against the wall and my hands shaking, which was partly the cold and partly not the cold at all. He went into blast freeze with me. We went in together. We drove down the row. To the far end. The carcass at the end of the row was hanging normally, oriented correctly, exactly as it should be. The cavity was empty. There was nothing dark in it, nothing that looked like eyes. The carcass was swaying gently in the draft from the blast fans, as it should be, as they all were, because all of the carcasses were moving again, all of them swaying their slow pendulum sway the way they always do. Travis looked at me. I looked at him. I could not explain what I had seen. I cannot explain it now. I quit trying to explain it about 6 months after it happened, because the explaining was making me crazy, and I had to make a choice between 2 uncomfortable options. Either something was in that room with me that night that I cannot account for, or I was experiencing some kind of perceptual break from the cold and the isolation and the fatigue, and neither of those options makes me feel good. But one of them is slightly easier to live with. I asked for a transfer out of blast freeze 3 weeks after that night. They put me on dry goods receiving. I have not been back in blast freeze since. I do not intend to go back. But here's the thing I think about. Here is the thing that keeps me up. 2 months after I transfer out of blast freeze, I am talking to one of the day shift cold room guys, a man named Robert who has worked that room for 7 years. And I tell him a version of what happened to me, a vague version. I do not give him all the details. I just say that something seemed off to me one night in the room, and I want to know if he has ever felt anything weird in there. And Robert looks at me for a long time without saying anything. And then he says, "You are not the first person to ask me that." He says there have been 3 other night shift operators over the past 4 years who have come to him with some version of the same question. He says one of them refused to go back in the room at all and quit. He says he does not know what is in there. He says he has his own suspicions, but he does not want to say them out loud. I ask him why. I ask him why he does not want to say them out loud. And he says, because I still have to work in there. And if I say it out loud, it becomes real. And I cannot afford for it to be real. I did not push him further. I understood exactly what he meant. If you are still watching this right now, if story 2 has you needing to take a breath before you go to sleep tonight, I want you to stay with me because story 3 is the one that took me the longest to decide to tell. Story 3 is the one that made 3 grown men walk off a shift and never come back. Stay with me. Story number 3. There is a sound that you can hear from inside a mixing vat in an industrial bakery at 3 in the morning that you are not going to find explained anywhere on the internet, that no occupational health and safety manual will prepare you for, that none of your coworkers will admit to having heard, even though you can see it in their faces when you bring it up. A sound that is soft and close and very clearly a human voice saying something in a language you almost understand, and I know this because I have heard it 7 times over 18 months, and the last time I heard it was the night that my coworker Carl put his hand on the side of a mixing vat to steady himself while he was leaning over it to check the dough consistency, and Carl pulled his hand back and said, in a voice that was absolutely flat and completely quiet, "It's warm," and walked off the floor, and I have not seen Carl since. My name is not important. What is important is that I work production support at a bakery in Kent. Not a small bakery, an industrial bakery. The kind of facility that produces bread and dough products on a scale that most people cannot conceive of. We are talking about ovens the length of a semi-truck. We are talking about mixing vats the size of a small car. We are talking about a facility that runs 24 hours, 3 shifts, and the night shift, my shift, the shift from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., is the one where the production lines are running at capacity and the management presence is minimal and the floor belongs to maybe 30 people spread across a very large, very loud, very hot building. Let me tell you about the job first because you need to understand the environment. Production support on nights means I am the person who keeps the process running. I am not an operator. I am not a line worker doing one task. I move between stations, I check temperatures, I monitor consistency, I troubleshoot small problems before they become large ones, I log data, I keep the supervisors on night shift informed about the state of the floor. I walk the entire facility multiple times per shift. I know every piece of equipment. I know every sound every piece of equipment makes. And I know the sounds it should not make. The facility is always hot. Even in winter, even in the middle of the night in Kent when it is 5 degrees outside, the facility is hot because the ovens run continuously and the heat they produce is immense. The tunnel ovens, which are the main production ovens, are maybe 60 feet long and they operate at temperatures between 200 and 240 degrees Celsius. The heat radiates from them constantly. Walking past a tunnel oven in full operation is like walking past the open door of a kiln. You feel it on your face from 6 feet away. The mixing vats are at the other end of the production process. The dough is mixed first and then travels through a series of processes before it reaches the ovens. The vats are large, stainless steel, maybe 4 feet deep and 8 feet in diameter, and they sit on a raised platform at one end of the mixing room. There are 6 of them in the main mixing area and they run on a cycle, mixing at different stages of the process, and when they are running the noise in the mixing room is significant. The motors that drive the mixing arms are large motors, and they create a deep rhythmic sound as the mixing arm rotates through the dough. It is a sound you stop hearing after a while because it is constant. Background: industrial white noise. But when the vats are between cycles, when they are not actively mixing, when the motor is off and the mixing arm is still, they are quiet. And in that quiet, at 3 in the morning, they are strange objects. Let me tell you the rules of the mixing room because some of them matter for what happens. Rule 1. No one enters the mixing room without checking the cycle status board at the door because the mixing arms can engage automatically on a timer, and a person who is leaning into a vat when the arm engages does not walk away from that. Rule 2. The vats are cleaned between cycles, and the cleaning log must be initialed by the production support worker on duty. Rule 3. No food or drink in the mixing room. These are the main rules. They are sensible rules. What the rules do not cover, what no rule covers, is what to do when you hear a voice coming from inside a vat that is empty, cleaned, and locked on standby. The first time I hear it, I am 3 months into the job. It is a Friday night or Saturday morning, about 3:15. I am doing my cycle check on the mixing room. Vats 2, 4, and 6 are mid-cycle, mixing. Vats 1, 3, and 5 are on standby between cycles. The room is loud from the running vats. I am doing my check and I walk past vat 3, which is on standby, which is quiet, and I hear something. Under the noise of the running vats. Something much closer and much quieter. Like a whisper. I stop. I step closer to vat 3. The vat is at shoulder height on the raised platform, so the rim of it is level with my face when I step up onto the platform step. I lean toward it, and I hear it more clearly. It is a sound from inside the vat. It is rhythmic. It is soft, and it has the cadence and the quality of a human voice. Not singing, not crying, whispering. Whispering something I cannot make out clearly over the noise of the running vats. A voice that rises and falls in a pattern that sounds like speech, like words, but just below the threshold of intelligibility. I take a full step back. I look around the room. I am the only person in there. I check the cycle status board. Vat 3 is confirmed standby. I look at the physical controls on the vat, which show the standby indicator. I look into the vat. It is empty, clean, still. The mixing arm is locked in the rest position. I tell myself it is acoustic bleed from the running vats. I tell myself the sound of the mixing motors is traveling through the frame of the platform and resonating inside the empty vats and creating an artifact that sounds like a voice. I am not entirely unconvinced of this explanation. I log my check and I move on. The second time I hear it is 2 weeks later. Vat 5 this time. Same conditions, same hour, same quality of sound. This time I stay and listen for longer. Maybe 2 full minutes. And the longer I listen, the more convinced I become that it is not acoustic artifact. Because acoustic artifact does not have rhythm in the way a human voice has rhythm. Acoustic artifact does not pause. Acoustic artifact does not change in the way speech changes, does not have the rising and falling pattern of actual words being spoken. This does. This has all of that. This sounds like someone whispering a prayer, or a list, or a story. I do not tell anyone. Not yet. The third, fourth, and fifth times happen over the following 4 months. Always between midnight and 4 a.m. Always from a vat on standby. Always the same quality, that rhythmic rising and falling whisper. By the 4th time I have convinced myself there is a rational explanation, I just have not found it yet. By the 5th time I am less sure. The 6th time changes things. The 6th time is the first time anyone else is in the room when it happens. I am doing my check and I have another production support worker with me. A new hire named Jonah who is on his first week on floor. We are doing the check together because he is still being trained. And I hear it. I hear it from vat 2. And before I can decide whether to say anything, Jonah stops walking and turns toward vat 2 and says, "What is that?" I look at him. He is looking at the vat. I ask him what he means. He says there is a sound coming from inside that vat. He says it sounds like someone is in there. He looks genuinely confused rather than frightened. The look of a person who has heard something their brain cannot immediately categorize. I tell him it is acoustic resonance from the running equipment. I say it in the most confident voice I have. He nods slowly, and we move on. But he glances back at vat 2 twice before we leave the room. And the next day, on the shift overlap, Jonah asks around among the day shift workers about the vats. I find out he does this. I find out because one of the day shift workers comes to me and says, "Hey, your new guy was asking about the vats this morning, asking if anyone else hears things in there." And I say, "What did you tell him?" And the day shift worker says, "I told him to stop bringing it up. Just stop bringing it up." And then he walks away. I stop him. I ask him what he means. He looks at me for a long time. And he says, "Look, there are things about this building that you do not need to go looking for because they will find you on their own soon enough." He says he has been on day shift here for 5 years. He says that at certain times, usually in the transition hours between shifts, between 2 and 4 in the morning on nights, between 5 and 7 a.m. in the morning, there are sounds in the mixing room that cannot be explained. He says most of the long-term workers know about it. He says nobody talks about it because talking about it makes it harder to come in every night. I ask him if he knows what it is. He shakes his head. He says he does not know and he does not want to know. He says what he has heard from other long-term workers, from stories that go back to when the facility was under different ownership, is that the building itself is old. That before it was a bakery, it was other things. That before it was anything industrial at all, the land it sits on had a different history. He says he does not know the details. He says he does not want to know the details. He tells me one more thing before he goes. He says, "Whatever you do, do not lean into the vat when it is speaking." Because 3 years ago a worker did that, leaned his whole head into a vat to hear better. And he stood back up and his face was wrong. His expression was wrong. And he did not speak for the rest of that shift. And when his wife picked him up at the end of the shift, she called the facility manager 2 hours later and said her husband had not spoken a word since she picked him up and he would not tell her what happened, and she was frightened. The facility manager did not know what to tell her. The worker came back the next day. He never spoke about what happened, but he never went into the mixing room again. Not for the rest of the time he worked there, which was another 8 months. And on his last day, the other workers asked him why he avoided the mixing room, and he just shook his head and said, "I heard what it was saying." He never told anyone what it was saying. Now I need to tell you about the night of the 7th time, because this is the night Carl's hand touches the vat. This is the night that everything comes to its head. It is a Monday in September. The shift has been normal. No unusual incidents. Good production numbers. The ovens are running clean, the lines are running on schedule, and the mixing room is in its normal overnight rhythm, cycling through the dough preparation stages. At 2:50 am I do my scheduled check of the mixing room. I am accompanied by Carl, who is a production support lead, been in the building for 6 years, late 40s, a solid and unshakable man. The kind of person who fixes things without drama and goes home and does not think about work until he is back in the building. Carl is not a person prone to imagination or anxiety. Carl is the least frightened person I have ever met. We enter the mixing room. Vats 1, 3, and 5 are mid-cycle. Vats 2, 4, and 6 are on standby. We start our check from the left side of the room and work right. We check Vat 1, running normally. We check Vat 2, standby, clean, all readings normal. We move to Vat 3, running normally. We move to Vat 4, and I hear it, coming from Vat 4. The whisper, the rising and falling rhythmic sound from inside the empty, clean standby vat. And this time it is louder than I have ever heard it. Not loud enough to be heard over the running vats if you were standing across the room. But from 2 feet away, it is unmistakably a voice. Unmistakably something speaking. Carl hears it before I say anything. He stops. He tilts his head toward Vat 4. And the expression on Carl's face, on this solid, unshakable man's face, is one I have never seen on him before. It is concentration. Deep, uncomfortable concentration. The look of a person working very hard to understand something. He takes a step toward the vat. He steps up onto the platform step. He leans slightly toward the rim. And he reaches out and puts his hand flat against the side of the vat to steady himself. And then he pulls it back. He pulls it back the way you pull your hand back from a hot stove. fast and sharp, and he holds his hand in front of him and looks at it. And in a voice that I have never heard from Carl, in a quiet, flat voice that has absolutely nothing in it, no emotion at all, he says, "It's warm." The vat, the standby vat, the empty, clean, cool stainless steel vat that has not had any mixing cycle running in it for over an hour and is sitting in a room that is hot, yes, from the ovens, but not hot enough to make a heavy gauge stainless steel vat warm to the touch. Carl says it is warm, and then Carl steps off the platform and walks toward the door of the mixing room. He does not say anything else. He does not look at me. He walks to the door and he pushes through it, and he is gone. I stand in the mixing room alone. The voice from vat 4 has stopped. All the vats are making only their normal sounds, motors and mixing arms and production noise. I stand there for about 30 seconds, and then I do something I have never done before. I step up onto the platform. I put my own hand flat against the side of vat 4. It is warm, not hot, not burning, not the warmth of equipment running. A different warmth. The warmth of something living. The warmth of a body temperature. 37 degrees. Human body temperature. From the inside of an empty stainless steel mixing vat at 3 in the morning. I take my hand off the vat. I step off the platform. I walk out of the mixing room. I find my supervisor and I tell him I need the mixing room shut down for inspection. He asks why. I tell him I cannot explain it and I need the room shut down now. He can hear something in my voice because he does not argue. He shuts the room down. The maintenance team inspects vat for the next morning. They find nothing wrong. No equipment fault. No temperature irregularity. No explanation for what Carl felt and what I felt. The report says the vat is operating within normal parameters. Carl does not come back after that night. He submits his resignation via text message. He does not give a reason. His supervisor calls him. Carl does not answer. His 6 years of tenure, his perfect attendance record, his reputation as the most reliable man on the floor, ended with a phone call that went to voicemail and a hand against a warm metal wall at 3 in the morning. I am still there. I am still working that job. I do not know why. Maybe because leaving feels like admitting something I am not ready to admit. Maybe because I have gotten good at what the day's shift worker told me, at not looking for it, at logging my checks and moving on and letting the sound be what the sound is without trying to understand it. But I will tell you this. I will tell you the last thing I am going to tell you tonight. 3 weeks ago, I am doing my check on the mixing room. It is 3:15 a.m. All vats on standby, between cycles. The room is quiet, and I hear the whisper from vat 3. And this time, for the first time in 18 months, I can make out individual words. Not all of them, not a sentence, but 3 words, clear and distinct, and in a voice that is low and even and somehow very close, even though it is coming from inside a metal vat. 3 words. Do not leave. I logged my check. I initialed the cleaning log. I walked out of the mixing room. I went back to the production floor. And I kept working. And I will be back on Friday. And I will walk into the mixing room again. And I will do my check. And if it speaks again, I will log my check and I will walk out. Because the alternative is to stay and listen. And I am not ready for that. Because I think what it says next might be something I cannot unhear. And I think that might be what happened to the man who leaned his whole head into the vat 3 years ago. I think he heard something that the rest of us are still being protected from. Not by luck, not by distance, but because we keep moving. Because we do not stop. Because we follow the one rule that applies to every dark building and every quiet hour and every voice that comes from somewhere it should not be. Keep moving. Do not stop. Do not lean in. If you watched all 3 of these stories tonight, if you are sitting there right now feeling the particular weight that these kind of stories leave on you, then I need you to do one thing for me. Tell me in the comments which of the 3 got to you the most. The child in the warehouse, the eyes in the cold room, or the voice in the vat. Tell me, because I read every one. And because the fact that people are out there listening is the one thing that makes it easier to go back. And if you work nights, anywhere, any building, any shift, and something has happened that you have told yourself was nothing, that you have filed away under tired or stressed or imagining things. I want you to know something. You are not imagining things. The night shift shows you things. It shows you the parts of the world that the daytime keeps covered. And some of those things, some of what lives in the in-between hours, in the dark aisles and the cold rooms and the mixing rooms at 3 in the morning, some of it has been waiting a very long time for someone to finally pay attention. Stay safe out there and leave the light on.